Now students, Assalamu alaikum. Today lecture is based on one of the another significant algorithm of machine learning named as decision tree algorithm. We have already discussed the artificial neural network as a classification algorithm in lecture number 4 and lecture number 3. Now we will talk about another type of classification algorithm of machine learning is decision tree algorithm. We will discuss some basic concept related to the decision tree algorithm, and then we will see how we can resolve the real life problem making use of this decision tree algorithm. To start with decision tree algorithm, first we have to talk about some classification tasks. This is a pictorial view through which you can understand how the classification task actually process of work. Here you can define the concept based on the parameter which we have already discussed in the basic definition of machine learning. For example, we have seen and we already know about the three basic terms which is being observed in the first two lecture of the machine learning is training set, test sets, learning algorithms, model, learning model which is being derived from the learning algorithm and the training set provide to the system, and then we have a final model on which you have to develop your entire system. Based on this model, you can see here basically whenever we will apply some test set, these testers should verify this model. It means that actually any classification task is basically at least make use of training set which is actually defined over here. Here you can see that we have a training set comprises on three attributes and based on the class. What is the task of the classification which we are going to discuss in a decision tree algorithm or making use of decision tree algorithm is to identify the class based on their attributes. We didn't define the attribute here, we are just making use of the term attribute individually here. We will define the attribute as per problem in the coming slide. Here we have three attributes you can see here in the training set, right? And all three attribute is basically relates a class or a define a class, and that class is basically totally depends upon the combination of three attributes. What are the changes occurs in three attributes, and whenever the three attributes value combine, the what will be the classification and class you have to select from this training set. Whenever this training set goes into the learning model, then you need a thing which is called learn model. Here you can see this through this diagram. We have a training set, and in classification task this training set is being introduced to learn model. But this training set is not only a part of this learning model mechanism or a behavior or process. We have to have some learning algorithm with this particular training set. So here you can see that the learn model will be obtain a process making use of two things, training set over here and the learning algorithm. Here we are making use of decision tree as a learning algorithm. In the previous lectures, we have talked about the artificial neural network. If we place artificial neural network as a classification task, so in this block where we are writing learning algorithm is being replaced by artificial neural network. But definitely in this lecture our focus will be on the decision tree. So our algorithm will be on decision tree. So actually the decision tree is treated as a learning algorithm, and here we have a training set. Whenever the training set is being introduced with this learning algorithm, now call it as decision tree, then the system learn model which is actually comprises on the training set as well as the learning algorithm which is now call it as decision tree. Whenever the learning is start, after learning this model, the classification task or the learning model with the help of the training set will produce the model. This is the model which is being produced by the combination of the learning algorithm which is being used, as I am talking about the decision tree, and the training set which is being provided to the system. So these two things are combined at this point. Got it? And the combination of these two things provided the model. This model is basically the generalized model, which is actually derived from the attributes or a training set, which is actually comprises on attributes, and the learning model, which is being introduced, through which you have to learn the parameter which is defined in the training set. Here you people already aware of it. In this example, we make use of three attributes and one class. It means making use of three attributes, you are going to identify a single class of object. It depends upon the attribute, because actually it may vary. Attributes may be more than 3, 4, 5, 6, depends upon your data set. But here, for the sake of easiness and understanding, we make use of only three attributes and make use of these three attributes acting as a learning algorithm. And that learning algorithm is basically produce the model which you can see here in this block. Over here we have a model. Now, what happens next? Whenever the model has been established, making use of the learning algorithm, which is now decision tree in this lecture, and the training set, then you may apply a test set. This test set should be different from the training set. And we have already discussed, whenever we are going to test the model which is being generated from the training set and the learning algorithm, our test set should be unseen. You can see here no attribute combination is same as the attribute combination in the training set. That's why your test set is basically a novel as compared to your training set. You make use, and these are the those attributes or the training the data part which is being not being used in the training set. So actually you make use of some unseen information which is being introduced in the model, and your model should be enough capable enough to identify the class with the help of these attributes. So this is basically the total task in this classification, making use of decision tree, that we have to have some model or a develop a model, and that model has been validated making use of some test set, and the attribute of the test set is same as the training set, but the value of the attribute are not same as the training set value. It means you are making use of some unseen data which is being introduced in the system to validate the system. That is basically increase the generalization capability of classification task. This is the core idea behind any classification task. So whenever you are going to apply and making use of a classification or any type of classification, you need at least two things. One is called to be a training set, and second is called to be a learning algorithm. Here we have already defined, we make use of decision tree as a learning algorithm. So our learning algorithm will become decision tree over here. Got it? And this is my training set. You may use of any other algorithm to solve the task, definitely, but here our focus is on decision tree. Now, the classification task, as far as the basic description is concerned, is concerned with the previous slide, then we can say that actually the training set is a collection of record. You have already seen we have enough data in a training set which is used to train the system for further for developing a model as well as for testing a model. Each record contain a set of attributes. I've already shown we have a three different attributes in my training set. Got it? One of the attribute is the class, and then a class. So actually the attributes have to identify the class. So the entire task of this the classification is to identify the class, and to identify the class what we have to do, we find a model of a class attribute as a function of the value of the other attribute. So actually you have to develop the model, and this model is being developed making use of two things. One is a training set which is comprises on the attributes which you people already seen in the previous slide, and then learning algorithm. Here we are making use of the decision tree as a learning algorithm, right? So the actual goal of the entire classification task is to actually develop a model which is being assigned which is being defined assigned class of with the help of the different attribute for test data as well as training data. The training data will use to train the system, whereas the test data is used to validate the system. Either the system is capable to work with some unseen information or not. So here we have already discussed these terms, but here we are actually tried to define the training sets, the test set, the attribute, and actually the class which is actually my output. So my output is defined because I've already told you classification is basically fall under the category of supervised learning. As far as the supervised learning is concerned, you people are aware of it. The supervised learning is basically the those type of learning in which the output is defined, and that's why we make use of class which is already being defined, making use of the different attributes. This is an idea how the classification tasks work. We have already described this idea pictorially in the previous slide, whereas the descriptive manner in this slide. You people are aware of it, if how the classification task has been performed. Either we are making use of a artificial neural network as a learning algorithm or a decision tree as a learning algorithm. There are so many examples of classification tasks which may use decision tree or any other classification algorithm, but you may use this type of classification task to categorize the mail as an spam, to make use of structure to identify, classify the structure of 14, classify the credit card transactions, and identify the fraud, whereas the prediction of the student failure in advance. So these are the possible areas and example in a real life in which you can directly apply the classification task. It is not necessary in each application you make use of decision tree, but actually these particular real life